Bonjour.
Hello and a warm welcome to So French, le podcast about France, its crazy politics and life à la française.
From the National Assembly to the streets and beyond, my name is Stefan de Vries.
And my name is Sara Bertilsson.
And this week we'll bring you the latest from the French budget negotiations. Nothing like the regular parliamentary business. This time the stakes are very high. We've already seen a few governments over the past year, and now the government's new Prime Minister's survival is at stake, and also France's and Europe's economic future.
We'll also check in with France's former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, who is now on his third week in prison for criminal conspiracy.
Did you already bring him some cake, Sarah?
Not me, but maybe someone else did.
And of course, it's a podcast from Paris, so we're also going to shop. We'll talk about the Shein or Shein Outrage. Actually, I don't know really how you pronounce it. I never used that website, but it's about the Chinese e-commerce giant. It's opening its first European permanent store in the center of Paris today, right around where you live, Sarah. But scandals have been following this grand opening. We talk about it and also about the fact that it involves pedophile sex dolls.
Something, right?
Yeah.
But we'll start this podcast actually where this whole thing began. This day, 10 years ago, we released our very first podcast, our pilot episode of So French. Stefan, I am been trying to remember what we talked about. Can you?
Well, I think it was President François Hollande at the time. So I think we started with him because already at the time we had lots to talk about French politics. Yeah, it's quite amazing. It's already 10 years ago that we started this podcast. We didn't know each other, really. We only met a few weeks before that. And yet we managed to tolerate each other for 5 years and make So French. And now we're back after 5 years.
Yes, and now we're back. And France is not really the same as it was not when we started this project 10 years ago, but not even what it was 5 years ago, actually, when we decided to pause everything. But to go back to that day 10 years ago, we released our pilot episode. But little did we know that only 1 week later we would live through what was probably has been the biggest trauma of French society in recent history. The 2015 Paris attacks.
Yeah, just a week later in the Saint-Denis suburbs, it attacked the Stade de France, but also, of course, the terraces in Paris's eastern neighborhoods, and of course the Bataclan. A horrible time already. We started that year, of course, with the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, but this was nothing compared to what happened in the beginning of 2015. It was the peak of several years of homegrown and international terror attacks in France. The country went into a state of emergency that lasted for, I think, 2 years or something. And these attacks were a big part of our 5 years of podcasting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you look at it now, 10 years, it's both a very, very long time. At the same time, I think you and I, as everyone else who were in Paris at the time, we remember this like yesterday. But I also what I remember is also the big political ideas about how these attacks were supposed to divide the society. There was a lot of talking about the need for unity. We saw these big marches, and especially this really big one, which was only like a week after the terror attacks, where world leaders came to France to show unity. 10 years later, Stefan, do you think that where do we stand today?
Yeah, at the time I was already pretty critical or cynical about the whole rhetoric of uniting the country, because France is a very divided country, and it still is. It maybe is even more than it was 10 years ago. I think the terror attacks from the the Islamist threat, I think that has largely disappeared. It still exists, of course, but it also had to do with the Arab Spring, what happened in Syria, the upcome of ISIS. All that seem now relics from the past, more or less, and the threat is now coming from a completely different direction, as we're seeing also in other European countries, mostly from the extreme right. I think that's something that we could not foresee at the time, and I think many immigrant people in France have been stigmatized since the attacks, and I wonder. Actually, I'm quite sure that that they are not being treated more equal than before the attacks. Interestingly enough, this week also marks the 20 years of the riots in the suburbs. Do you remember,
Yes,
Sarah?
of course.
2005.
Yes, absolutely.
There was already a sign of how divided French society is, isn't it?
Mhm. Yes,
What do you
absolutely.
think?
And the same thing after that, there was, I mean, the mantra was that we need to create bridges. We need to bridge this divide and to unite the country. And yes, no, it's true. Nothing has really happened. Well, not for the better, at least. I'm. How do you think? I mean, what we're seeing now is like a never before seen support for the far right National Rally
Yeah.
Party, even if Marine Le Pen probably won't be able to stand in next year's, in the 2027 presidential election. Her protégé, Jordan Bardella, has, I saw the latest polling numbers, about 35% first round voters. So do you think that the rise of the National Rally Party has anything to do with the terror attacks 10 years ago?
I don't know if the two are linked. I mean, the rise of the far right in France is already something that's going on for many years. You should remember that Jean-Marie Le Pen, who died in those 5 years that we didn't have a podcast, he was first elected in 1956. So that's almost 70 years ago. Of course, they have been they stayed a niche for a very long time, but in 2002, so that's already more than 2 decades ago, Jean-Marie Le Pen was in the second round of the presidential elections. I think what happened also in France with the right is that you see that the extreme right rhetoric has more or less infiltrated the other parties, even the Socialist Party, and that's something you see in many European countries. Maybe the extreme right is not in power, but they influence the traditional parties, and I think that's something that happened also in France. Look at the current government of Emmanuel Macron, and the previous one as well. For instance, Retailleau, but there are also Eric Ciotti. They're all men that are pretty right wing, and that could even be a member of the Rassemblement National without blinking their eyes. So I think extreme right politics, they have become mainstream.
Now you can clearly see that the political spectrum has taken a real. I mean, the parties have taken a real turn to the right, especially the traditional conservative party, the Les Républicains, who is
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
having a very hard line, far right or right wing policy.
Yeah. But it was a very sad time at the time. There were some more attacks. Of course, the next year there was the attack in Nice in 2016 in the summer. Although that has never become clear whether that was really a terrorist attack or an attack of a lone psychiatric patient. But nevertheless, it was a very scary year as well. There were a lot of military. Yeah.
Yeah, militaries in the streets. There's constant like security threat and going. We got used to it, I must say, as
Yeah.
well. I mean, in the beginning it was a bit shocking, but today it's part of daily life. Unfortunately, seeing soldiers in the streets, being searched everywhere you go. Some of it was taken away when the state of emergency was cancelled. But of course, many of these measures are still in place, and it has now shaped it shapes today our daily life here in France. I was thinking about there has been a lot of these documentaries, movies. This week is released a very a TV series that has got a lot of media coverage because it's built on real stories of survivors from the Bataclan attacks. I wanted to hear about you, Stefan. Do you watch these movies and documentaries about the attacks?
No, actually, I prefer not to because I think the memory is still too painful. I found it very hard to work at those months, although I didn't realize it at the time because I was just doing my job as a journalist and I was going, very, very high speed. But a couple of years later, no, I think it was a very dark period. It's also one of the reasons I finally left Paris. So I don't really feel like watching all these documentaries. I still feel it's a little bit too soon, even though it's already 10 years ago. But no, do you? Do you watch anything?
No, I have exactly the same expression. Every time I feel like I should watch this because I
Yeah.
feel as a journalist it is my work to follow these stories even after and a long time after they happen to see how we look at these things with a little bit more of a distance and to continue to follow a story. But I'm the same way. I just can't. I can't do it, and I'm I'm a bit sorry about that because it's an important part of our job, but it's a little bit it's too close to home, I must say. And here in Paris, the Bataclan concert venue reopened a couple of years ago, actually. For concerts, and I'm a big concert goer. I see a lot of gigs, but it's one of the venues where I just can't go there. It's impossible for me, and I know it's not it's not a criticism of those who go there because it was the wish of many of the survivors as well that this venue was going to go back to be a place of joy and music and party and everything, but on a private personal level I can't really do that. So no,
Yeah,
it's
no, I have the same thing. Of course, we're journalists and we should consider this work, but we were also Parisians at the time. It was also in our city. My office was right around the corner of the Bataclan. You lived not far away from it, so it was also our personal space and not only our professional space. And I think the two are still not connected, so I can totally relate. I find it pretty painful to watch images from that time, and also testimonies from people who survived or who were at the Bataclan. Maybe in 10 years from now we can talk about it more, less emotionally.
probably, hopefully.
Hopefully
In
we'll
any
still
case,
be there.
of course. In
Yeah.
any case, next week, 10 years since the Paris terrorist attacks, and we of course have our thoughts go out to the victims and their families for this horrible thing that happened now 10 years ago. Okay, so Stefan, I have a question for you. It's been called Frankenstein because of its scary features. Someone even called it Loch Ness because everyone's scared of it, but not really knowing what it is, and probably for a good reason because it doesn't exist. What am I talking about?
Well, it's a monster that already killed 3 or 2 previous prime ministers. I guess you're talking about the budget.
The French budget.
Yeah.
Exactly. This week, debates ended in the French Parliament after 8 days. 8 days of a little bit of everything, some measures from the right, measures from the left, everything a big mess. No one really knows what it actually looks like at the end. And debates were paused on Monday at midnight without having been finished. All the amendments have not been actually debated. So now there will be a pause until next week, and then it's going to be picked up again. But what this shows is that the government's plan to have this first part of the budget, should say, that this first part of the debate, that it didn't go as planned. It couldn't be voted on Tuesday, and it's looking pretty bad for them to follow, to actually be able to keep the timeline that they've set up for this budget. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're already too late. I think the Constitution says the budget for the next year should be ready in the first week of October or something. So they're already a month behind. They're using all kinds of emergency technicalities to make sure that they can continue with the budget for next year, even though they're already not respecting the Constitution. Yeah, the country is running on borrowed time and more importantly on borrowed money. And the problem is, of course, that the credibility of France is also, well, I would say at stake, but it's really gone. If you look at the other European member states, nobody trusts the French anymore. So more than the budget, also France's credibility is at stake, or at stake, I'm saying. I mean, it's literally evaporated. The other European member states really don't trust the French anymore, that they will come up with a budget that respect the European rules. So it's almost an impossible equation to solve for the French government. And the problems are enormous. And I'm really surprised to see the absence to get to some kind of compromise to make sure the country can get healthy again. But there's no sense of compromise at all at the Assembly.
No, I mean, as one said, it's not really a French feature to do compromise. It's the whole system is built on something very different.
Yeah.
But what's interesting this time is how the government and the Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu this time decided to actually, instead of presenting a budget where he knew that he had a majority and that he could get it through Parliament, he actually more or less dumped the budget idea on the National Assembly, which is, as we know, extremely divided, for them to sort of fight it out in debates, measure by measure. And what I am wondering about this is how anyone can believe for a second that this budget, by doing it this way, is gonna be able to stick to the general frame and the budget, the total budget, you know, because no one is really interested in talking about the full project. Everything is about measures, measure by measure. So yeah, it's really the Frankenstein idea of this, that, you know, we're creating something bit by bit, but not looking to the totality of it. So I'm very skeptical that they're actually going to get anything, going to get agreed on a budget by the end of the year. They will have, I mean, according to the Constitution, they do have to have it by the 31st of December. It's very unlikely that's going to happen. And then, and then we're going to see where the next steps will be. There will be one thing is for sure. There is no such thing as a French shutdown. French society doesn't stop working because there is no budget, but it means that many things are actually they won't function as they should, and they have to take like emergency measures to get some of the payments going, and pensions, for example, will not be raised according to inflation, for example, and so there are things like that we will have an impact on French citizens' wallets.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and France's debt to GDP is already almost the highest in Europe, and the public debt in France is increasing with 9,000 euros a second. That's an astonishing amount, and the politics remain messy. No one wants cuts. No one wants to vote taxes, and alliances shift faster than political ambitions. So it's really a big mess, and I think it's also a big threat for the Eurozone. And I don't have the impression that French politicians are aware of the fact that they're putting Europe at danger. I haven't heard the word Europe at all during the debates in the French Assembly. But hey, we'll see. Maybe they will come up with a magic trick, and then suddenly there's enough money for everybody, and everybody will be happy. But it's France, so I'm not sure.
No one will be happy.
Yeah.
No, but what interesting is we haven't seen much of Emmanuel Macron.
No, true.
He is this week touring the regions, we are told here. So he is actually in the country. He's out and about a little bit, and he's going to meet up with French citizens. But we have seen very, very little of him. And it says something. I mean, the country is going through a major crisis, and the president is absent. I don't know, Stefan. Well, you're spending a lot of time in Brussels these days. What's your feeling about how Europe and Brussels, how do they feel about France today?
Everybody in Brussels is very, very worried. Of course, France is the second largest economy of the European Union, is one of the founding members. And what do you do if one of the founding members does not respect the rules that they have themselves invented? So that the rules I'm talking about are, of course, the rules for the budget. Every country should have preferably a balanced budget, but you are allowed to have a budget that's 3% to the short on the budget when it comes to the national GDP. Also, your debt can not longer be higher than 60%. So these rules are actually French rules that the French made up in the 1990s, and the French never respected them. So there is, the people are very worried in Brussels because this can have an impact on the European financial markets. Also, what's irritating a lot of Europeans now is that the Europeans, apart from the French, they will have to work longer to finance actually the French people who are retired. It is the proposition to lower the retirement age to 64, 63 is met with a lot of incomprehension in the European countries, because all the European member states have increased their age of retirement, which is logical because life expectations, and that makes sense because people live longer and longer and they can work longer and longer in good health as well, but not in France. So there's a lot of anger actually with France, still diplomatically expressed, but France has no more credibility in Brussels. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see Emmanuel Macron acting so actively on the international stage when it comes to the war in Ukraine, because there he can mean something, but in France, it's basically people are very angered and also upset by what's happening in France right now.
Yeah. So debates in Parliament back again in 2 weeks. So that's exactly when we'll have our next French episode. So we will continue to follow this, of course, throughout till the end of the year and see where this whole thing ends up. But for the moment, it doesn't look very good here.
No, it doesn't. And now we are going shopping, Sarah. Next to you, where you live, there's the grand opening of a new store in Paris. It's called Shein, the first physical store in the world of this Chinese e-commerce platform. And it's not anywhere. It's inside the beautiful and very well-known and prestigious BHV Marais, the department store in central Paris, just in front of City Hall. They will open a store of 1,000 square meters, but it's a very controversial retailer. They are criticized for everything from its products that are dangerous and toxic to their working conditions. They're exploiting people, and also the business model. Ultra fast fashion, intellectual property theft, and a very controversial company. And it's now opening a shop next to you, Sarah.
Yes. No, this has been a big deal here in France. It's created, I mean, strikes from the staff at the BHV. It's also, we've seen protests, demonstrations. There have been debates in media because, of course, Shein is not any company. And they're also opening I mean, they're known, it's an e-commerce giant, and they not normally do regular stores. But of course, opening up this big flagship shop in the center of Paris, it's a way for Shein to try to rebrand and change the image, which is, we must admit, not great. It's not great in France, but nowhere else, I think, either. And they have been, I mean, there's been a lot of criticism. They have been hitting back, and the CEO of Shein has said that with this investment in France, they're also putting extra money into recycling programs and changing production models, etc. But it hasn't really gone down. And so this week, as the shop is opening today, earlier this week, a new scandal exploded, we must say. And this was when it was revealed that the site has been commercializing these pedophile sex dolls. I don't know if you've seen them, Stefan. It is
No.
dolls that look very much like a 1.5-year-old child, a young child, a toddler, very realistic, but it's sold as a sex toy, and it's sold on these pages as for a good company for lonely men, for example. And it's a very, very uncomfortable thing to look at, and it's quite gross, to be honest. And this came out just earlier this week, and it's of course created a massive scandal. Politicians have been reacting. French government has said that, you know, if this is not dealt with by Shein, they could actually ban the site from France altogether.
Yeah.
Must be said, though, it's not only Shein who has been commercializing these dolls. It's also AliExpress and Wish, I think, and the Temu website as well. So, but since it coincides with the opening of this shop in Paris, of course, Shein is the store that gets all the biggest. The biggest criticism in this. Shein has said that they have now taken away these dolls from their sites, but of course it's a difficult it's a difficult moment for the site to say the least.
But at the same time, what we're seeing also is that Chinese brands are taking over the European shopping streets. Now the BHV, you live still close to it. I live very near to it. It's a very emblematic store of Paris, right? It was almost an institute, a monument. And now we're seeing this Chinese very cheap platform opening up such a huge space. They also announced to open shops at the famous Galerie Lafayette, also in other cities like Grenoble and Reims and Dijon. Does this also announce the end of the famous French Parisian department stores that we know?
I don't know. I think we're going to have to wait and see a little bit. I mean, they have been capable of reinventing themselves and returning from hard times before. But the thing is, the whole commercial world is changing, of course. People don't shop in stores anymore. People shop online. And these big department stores are, I mean, they cost a lot. I mean, to have staff to work there, to all the taking care of the buildings. I mean, it's and if customers don't buy things anymore, of course they're gonna try to find new ways of making money. So, but we'll see. I have a little bit a feeling that this Shein deal might create a backlash for BHV, or it is creating a backlash, but such big backlash maybe that they could eventually decide to go back on the decision to invite them to be there. But we're going to have to wait and see a little bit further. There has been many brands who actually decided to leave the BHV when it was announced that Shein was setting up inside the building, and also Disney decided that they were pulling out of a collaboration for the holidays this year. They were supposed to have a pop-up shop at the BHV and also do the window displays for Christmas. And they actually announced, this was before the pedophile sex dolls, I should say, they were pulling out of this collaboration. So, I mean, they're bringing in money on one end, but they're also losing credibility and collaboration and money, say, on the other. So we'll see where this whole thing ends up. But yeah, it's definitely a stir here in Paris, I must say. It's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, one person who will not be shopping in the high streets or at the BHV anytime soon is Nicolas Sarkozy. He may go shopping on e-commerce. Few would have missed that France's former president has been sentenced to 5 years imprisonment for conspiring to fund his election campaign with money from the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. It has now been almost 3 weeks since the man, once called the Bling-Bling President, entered the La Santé prison in central Paris. He is held in solitary confinement for his own security, separated from other inmates. So he's totally alone now, Sarah, is he?
Not completely on his own, definitely not. And he has had the visit of a very important person lately, no one less than Gérald Darmanin, France's justice minister. Very chic. So, and this is, of course, something that did not pass very well, with chunks of the French public, of course, but also, of course, of judges and prosecutors and lawyers working in the French legal system who are very upset that one of the country's prisoners is receiving this very special treatment from the justice minister. So, yeah, what do you think about Darmanin going to see his friend? Because that is what he's saying, that he is visiting his friend. He didn't go there as the justice minister.
Yeah, but of course that's nonsense. I think it gives a very bad image of the judicial independence, but also we see that the corridors of power and cells of the prison are not as separated as we may have thought. It sends an alarming message because, imagine in another country, in the UK, for instance, a justice minister in Britain meeting a former prime minister in prison. That will be seen as a violent mix of protocol, principle, and also image, of course. And that's what's currently playing out in France. A group of 30 lawyers filed a complaint already. The French state has long proclaimed commitment to separation of powers. And now the Minister of Justice is just going into prison to visit Nicolas Sarkozy, not any criminal, but the former president of France. So that gives a very bad image that even as a president of France who turns out to be, let's not use the word criminal yet because he's still appealing, but yet in prison, first time in history. What does it mean? So it basically shows that even if you're in prison, you're still entitled to all kinds of privileges. It is not very smart of Darmanin to do so, but apparently he doesn't give anything about it.
No, no, he has been very criticized for this, but nothing that because he had announced that he was going to see Nicolas Sarkozy in prison, so it didn't come as a surprise. But no, none of these, not the lawyers, not the judges, not the public opinion, actually made him change his mind. He went through with his visit, and no, it isn't. It is the debate here in France has been quite intense after the sentencing of Nicolas Sarkozy, and the whole idea of having a former president in prison. Of course, this is nothing of the usual. I mean, this is unusual. I mean, for most countries, and for France, it hasn't happened before. But the debate has some said that you cannot put a former president in prison, and especially you cannot, even if you do so, that former president cannot be treated like any other inmate. And that's sort of where the debate has been, because of course you have those saying, well, president or not president, the law is the same for everyone, and the treatment, if you're convicted, should be the same for everyone. But Gérald Darmanin definitely showing where his loyalties lie in this case.
Yeah.
Stefan, I don't know, have you been watching any TV lately? Any nice shows? What were you doing last night?
I was working actually. I'm so busy the last couple of weeks. I didn't watch a lot of TV. Life is going a little bit too fast for me at the time.
Well, if it's going too fast, I might have something for you here.
Enlighten
I
me.
actually spent a little bit of my evening last night looking at the tides of Mont Saint-Michel, this new hit TV series that was released in France, which is part of this new movement of slow TV. So this is the show that shows, well, these famous tides at Mont Saint-Michel. They are particularly big twice a year. Beginning of November this year is one of these moments. And yeah, the French television has decided to set up 9 cameras, I think it is, and microphones. So we are all able to follow this natural nature experience from our living rooms.
Yeah. For the people who don't know Mont Saint-Michel, this is of course the very famous hill in the sea with the beautiful medieval church and houses, and twice a day it's inundated. You cannot go there, and it's in a city in the sea. It's a marvelous. It's a UNESCO heritage site. So now we're going to watch that for hours and hours. Is there anyone watching it, Sarah?
Well, it started only on Monday, so for the moment it's a little bit too early to say. It will last for 155 hours.
Wow.
But it comes after a big success for a similar story here, which was The Forest of Rambouillet, that was released in early October, I think it was, and that had millions of viewers on the France Télévisions, so the national broadcaster's website. And this follows, I mean, this is a trend that we've been seeing for quite a few years now. Of course, the beginning of all this was many years ago in the 1960s when Andy Warhol filmed his friend and poet sleeping for hours. But then this concept of watching something very, very slow, or actually nothing happening, watching the nothing, it was picked up by the Norwegians, who turned out to be masters of this, or at least big fans of watching slow TV. They in 2009, I think it was, filmed a train ride from the south to the north. And it lasted for hours and hours, and it was a massive success. And then it was followed up by a boat trip with the Hurtigruten boat, and many more after that. And then this concept has been sold and followed by countries all over the world. In Sweden, we had a few years ago the big moose migration. had
What
lost
was
it.
that?
Well, it is moose
Migrating, I
they're
assume.
migrating. That is what it is. But most of what it is trees and forests and nothing for hours and hours. And this lasted for 3 weeks. And well, one and occasional moose here and there, and maybe some other animals in the forest, of course. But this was a big success as well. People clearly enjoy the contemplating of nature and things. As you say, maybe things go a little bit too fast these days, and you just need something to relax to. And I mean,
Yeah.
personally, for me, I watched these tides for a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour, and then I went back to watching a French political debate, a
And
little bit
and
more
a
exciting.
and a spoiler alert, after the high tide, there's also the low tide. Maybe you wouldn't expect it. Very surprising scenario. But I think it's actually nice that in a country crowded with protests and debates and confrontations, that this slow TV initiative is actually a kind of cultural counterpoint. Yeah, maybe it's a nice reminder that the deepest story are not in words, but just in gentle waves. Where can we watch it? If
You can, of
somebody would
course,
like to
for
watch it?
those who are interested, this is on the France TV, France Télévision, their website. It's called Les Grandes Marées de Mont-Saint-Michel, and it will be available, I think, for years to come. So there's no rush. Take your time and just watch the tides.
Yeah, we're also a bit like the waves. Huh? We go, but then we come back again, and we're always the strongest under a full moon or something like that. Thank you
Yeah,
for
something
listening.
like that.
This So French podcast is produced and presented by me, Stefan de Vries, and
By me, Sanne Bertilsson.
you can find our episodes where you usually get your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And make sure you don't miss any of our new shows. So subscribe or leave a little thumb or a comment in below, and please share this episode with your friends and family. And do send us an email. The address is bonjour@sofrench.show.
Bonjour, like the French hello. You can also find us on Instagram. Just search for sofrench.show. The original music for this program is made by Laurent Blot. We will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. Until then, take care and
Au revoir.
au revoir.